I know. Yeah, thanks for coming to the stablecoin panel. And as you've probably seen, there are people here on stage that are ready to talk about stablecoins, and you guys are ready to listen to them talk about stablecoins. So let's start off easy and just have you guys introduce yourselves. By the way, I'm Jarrell. I work at C Labs, which is one of the core teams building out Celo. And Celo's dope. Feel free to check us out. And then I'll start with you at the far end. Because you two are dressed the exact same, I want you to be very clear about who you are.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yes. My name is Pablo. I work at Angle, so a brand new stablecoin protocol that's going to be live, I hope, in October. And we're going to start with a stable euro on Ethereum mainnet.
Hey everyone, my name is Pablo as well. Just kidding. I'm Marek. I'm a CTO at C Labs. As Jarrell mentioned, one of the companies building out Celo. And Celo has its own layer 1, but it also has a built-in stablecoin platform, including a Celo Euro that just launched a few months ago.
Hey guys, my name is Julian. I work on a couple of projects, but also in Curve.finance, more like on the BD side now. And so Curve is an auto market maker specialized in stablecoins.
Never heard of Curve. I don't think any of us have. So let's just dive into it, and just to give you an idea of the format, like we're gonna talk about some things, obviously some questions, but we are gonna leave a few minutes for questions. So if you've got them, feel free to raise your hand at some point, and honestly, I'll come to you. We can do like a whole full service thing. It'll be fine. Let's start off with the two of you, twins. You're new to the space. You're about to launch. You've launched for a while. Yeah, I think a year live on mainnet as of April. So you're both doing programmatic stablecoins, from what I understand, and you're both looking to get involved in the the Euro stablecoin. Yours is called C Euro. What is yours called? Just Euro?
AG Euro.
What was that?
AG for
AG
Angle.
Euro?
AG Euro.
AG Euro. Nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Almost OG Euro.
Yeah.
Angle.
Angle.
Euro.
Nice. Okay, so introduce your Euro stablecoin, and why is the Euro stablecoin important to you? Why did you see this like as a viable?
Okay, sure. So before going into the details of the protocol, what needs to be understood, I think, it's the lack of Euro stablecoin in the ecosystem. The main reason for, I think, this lack of Euro stablecoin is the fact that there are very low interest rates in the Eurozone, which makes it super complex to build a company, a centralized company like a Tether equivalent of the euro, using euros as reserves. Because if you have 100 of euros in your bank backing 100 stablecoins, well, every year the 100 euros you have at your bank keep decreasing, meaning naturally your stablecoin gets under collateralized. So that's why there is no euro stablecoin so far. That's one of the main reasons. The other big reason, I think, it's the regulatory reason. So the European Central Bank has been super against euro stablecoin. There have been like declarations by Christine Lagarde saying, look, we don't want a euro stablecoin. And that has prevented many people from entering the space. And so that's why we wanted to do something cool, build a euro stablecoin programmatically, which I think is the best way to build a euro stablecoin. Because if you want to build a euro stablecoin with the centralized euro stablecoin with the negative interest rates, well, you need to charge high fees. You need to take like 2% fees, 3% transaction fees to compensate for the fact that there is no, to compensate for the interest rates.
Okay. We can get into the regulation stuff, because I have some questions about like the metadata and like the stuff that you have to do to actually be compliant. But now you have had a programmatic stablecoin, mostly is a CUSD, but C Euro has just launched a couple months ago. And I want you to introduce your stablecoin and what led you to be like, this is the obvious next step. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yes, I'm playing up. I do know how this works because I work at Celo. But the treasury of Celo is backed by is backing C Euro and CUSD right now. And so, if you want to explain a little bit around the programmatic aspect of that and why you chose to go that route, because obviously we've seen a lot of programmatic stablecoins launch in the last like year and a half, and not all of them have been the most gracious of launches.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so I think CUSD and now CEuro, I think like Angle is a programmatic, they're both programmatic stablecoins. But one thing that we've done that I think is a little unique is that it's also backed by a collateral of crypto assets. So in a way, it has an element that's a little bit akin to Maker. So frequently we say it's a hybrid between the crypto collateralized and programmatic model, which we really like because it gives us the flexibility and the capital efficiency of programmatic stablecoins, but also gives us the protection in cases of down markets through having less correlated crypto assets that are backing the stablecoins, which is really, really nice. The other thing that I think is pretty unique and interesting is that it's native to the Celo platform. So there's actually mechanisms in place that we can put in to ensure that the reserve is always over-collateralized in cases of down markets that I think other purely smart contract-based projects can't really adopt. And that's quite nice. So for example, if the collateralization ratio drops below 2x, then the platform automatically diverts mining rewards from the community DAO that receives funds to the reserve so that it can bolster its collateralization ratio. And then the other thing that's also pretty unique is we can actually automatically impose a transfer tax or a Tobin tax onto all transfers of the native asset on Celo, which it's a very small kind of fee that, again, can bolster the reserve. And so by doing this, this is equivalent to, for example, if you had a stablecoin on Ethereum, to be able to divert mining rewards from Ethereum to the stablecoin reserve, which is really, really quite nice. And so when we were building the Celo stablecoins, we initially started building on top of Ethereum, but then we realized that if we actually launch as our own platform, we can put in a whole bunch of mechanisms that can make the whole thing way more stable than we could otherwise, and that's really, really nice. The final thing that I think also differentiates us, and again, it's tied to the fact that we're on our own platform, is the fact that you can actually pay for transaction fees with these stablecoins. So on Celo, you can pay for transaction fees with ERC20 tokens, and so as a result, you can actually send the CUSD coin and the CEuro coin and pay for that transaction using the actual asset itself. So you don't need an extra asset to pay for that transaction fee, which we're really excited about because it unlocks a whole bunch of really nice use cases that make stablecoins much more useful, I would say, in day-to-day transactions.
Speaking of the usability of stablecoins, I mean, let's go on to Julian here, the antithesis of your guys' wardrobe. I was going to ask, man, like, I mean, running Curve, why, just for those who may not know, like, why is Curve important to stablecoins? Like, what is the stablecoin ecosystem? And, I mean, you have two programmatic stablecoins here, so maybe this is a nullified answer, but or nullified question, but like, how does Curve just in general help stablecoins, you know, maintain stable?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think like a stable Curve is the biggest project in a stablecoin space, and we have about between 8 and 10 billion US dollars TVL inside the protocol, and compared to other projects like Uniswap or Balancer, Curve is very focused on the mathematics side. So, for example, like in Uniswap, you have the product invariant. In Balancer, you have the mean, constant mean. So those different formulas, they either focus on slippage or focus on liquidity, like the impairment loss. So Curve does it, the stable swap invariant basically provide the best slippage in the market, the best liquidity for almost zero impairment loss. And what it does is, the reason for that is because they're all stable between each of them. And what it does, and I think that's why it's very important in an ecosystem, it's also on the cryptonomics of Curve. the Curve token is really built in such a way that it replicates the lobbying or how the world works. And for any of those tables, in order to get on the platform, it's fully decentralized. So you can make a proposal, and if you're accepted by the token holders, then your stable will be listed on the platform. But how it works is, in order to have a lot of liquidity for your stable on the different pools, you need to get the CRV, the token, and then lock it, and then vote for your own pool. So for example, if you build, I don't know, like USDC or like other tokens or like Celo token, you will need to acquire a lot of lobby and then vote for the pool, because then it will automatically redirect a bit of the inflation of the Curve token. And at the moment, Curve is doing at 2 million CRV per day, so it's about like 2.5, 2 million, like $3 million US being airdropped for those people that provide liquidity on the system. And getting listed on Curve is it's basically the best way to, get your stable, because it will provide a lot of liquidity.
Yeah, I think that's a known fact. I think at this point, you guys are responsible for a crap ton of the volume and of all stablecoins, I believe.
Yeah, it's also like basically now it's cheaper to use Curve than use any centralized solution. Like you can also like make a swap of $100 million US and use like the synthetics mechanism that is built through Curve, and you have almost zero slippage. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to get into your slippage later, so we'll just table that for now before we get too technical. But it is pretty impressive. I was actually struck by something you just said, where you talk about it being fully decentralized, and there's governance proposal for, hey, I want to get my stablecoin listed, which you're nodding over there, which probably means you put some thought into it. And I want to ask, like, if you would go over how does your community get involved and list a new stablecoin through your protocol? And what leads you to think that? I feel like you're launching with the euro, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're launching from the European continent with the euro first. America is based in the United States, launching with the dollar first, and then the euro. So feel free to extrapolate your answers into where you think the next stablecoin comes from. Is it the Naira? Is it the Brazilian real? Is it the yuan? What are you doing?
So one thing I want to stress also is that so you have stablecoins pegged to currencies, but there is a whole world of stablecoins you could build. You could imagine a stablecoin pegged to temperature. So as long as you're able to maintain a peg to an asset or even to an imaginary asset, you can build any tokenized coin, and so you would call it stablecoins too. So I don't think we would have a stable temperature in Paris tomorrow on mainnet. I think currencies are really the next thing. What I think would be the next currency with which could gain a lot of traction, I think it's going to be the Korean won. There's a big community in Korea using cryptos, and that's why there was a stable dollar too at first, is because all the crypto world was in the beginning based in America, and their home money was dollar. But there are a lot of communities which, like ourselves in Europe, when you play with DeFi, you don't have access to a euro stablecoin, so you are subject to a change risk, euro-dollar, and so you are deprived of this luck to have stablecoins pegged to your home currencies. And so when you look at the size of communities, Korea is great. And so that's the first application, the size of the crypto community, and what is, I think, going to be the main drivers for the next stablecoins. And then the second thing is the real use case of stablecoins. So stablecoins, they can be used for remittances across the world, but they can be used for communities which are deprived of banks. And so that's, I think, if you want to look for the next stablecoins, you have to look into the countries where you don't have a big access to banks. So I would think about, I'm not an expert in that, but a stable CFA franc, for instance, might be. So it's like a stable euro because both currencies are pegged. But for people in Africa, I'm thinking in Ivory Coast, because I've been there recently, where people don't have banks, it could be a great use case.
All right, so this is his first panel. It's his first crypto event ever. Ongo's pretty new, and I just want to say, like, way to go. Good stuff, welcome. So on that note, same to you, because I think to kind of bolster what you're saying, you can create a stable token for anything, and I know that Celo is working on yes, obviously stablecoins and Celo and CUSD, and the community can propose things, but one of the things the community is currently proposing is like a natural backed asset to join the treasury to maintain the peg for CUSD and Celo. So how do you feel about these new assets being added to the treasury, or like just the idea of natural backed currencies in general?
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the really nice things about having a stablecoin that's backed by a basket of crypto assets is that you can experiment with putting interesting things in the actual reserve. And one of our advisors and a bit of a philosopher and author, Charles Eisenstein, he wrote this book in 2008, I believe. It's called Sacred Economics. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. It's really, really interesting. And one idea that he proposed was, wouldn't it be nice if, actually let me take a step back. One of the things he noticed was that whatever backs money, people tend to value more of in the world, right? So back when gold predominantly backed fiat, people went out and mined more gold because they could turn it into fiat and spend that fiat. And so he said, why don't we put something in the reserve that we want to see more of in the world? And so he was thinking, virgin rainforests, pristine rivers. Nowadays, people talk about affordable housing. It's really, really, really interesting and exciting. And back then, I think it was a really great idea, but implementing it was really, really difficult, right? And I think that's why nothing came about it over the last, 10, 15 years. But now that everything is crypto-based, it's entirely feasible to tokenize these things and start putting them into these reserves that back these stable coins. And so I think right now there's a governance proposal to put some tokenized carbon offset credits into the reserve. And there's a number of efforts around tokenizing the Amazon rainforests and a whole bunch of other things that the community is looking at right now to put into the reserve. Now, I think initially it's not going to be a big percentage of the reserve that is backed in this way.
Is that due to like the liquidity of carbon credit tokens?
Yeah, so there's liquidity, and ultimately the reserve has to be able to really efficiently collateralize the stablecoin, right? You don't want the stablecoin to ever become, the whole platform to become insolvent. And you also want it to be decentralized, right? One of the downsides of tokenizing these things is there tends to be a centralized entity that is doing that, right? So if you want to tokenize rainforests, the way you want to do it is you want hundreds of companies that are tokenizing rainforests to each create tokens and then to have the reserve hold a bit of each of these. And that way it's still decentralized and hopefully it's still quite liquid. And so we're testing our way into this. And the first community proposals are live right now. But what really excites me about this is it really presents a really, really exciting new future, right? I think we can choose to use Tether. We can choose to use centralized options that are running on networks that are contributing to global warming. In the future, there'll be the option to choose stablecoins that not only are running on networks that are carbon negative, but also that are actually backed by things that we want to see more of in the world. And I think that's going to be a really beautiful future.
Truly. And coming to you, Julian, I just think it's worth noting, I don't know that banks were really scared of crypto until we decided to start, messing around with stablecoins, and they were like, hey, a second, establishing value is kind of our job, so please don't. But I think that the question I would have for you, Julian, is you see a lot of stablecoins come through Curve. You come from Rect, so you've seen a lot of stablecoins lose their peg and
Rect
fail.
loves those algorithmic stablecoins.
Yeah, I mean, and this last year, we've seen Titan, we've seen Fei Protocol. We are now entering the light shit-talking center of this talk for a second. You've seen a lot of failed stablecoins, so. Or not failed, stumbled. Let's just be polite.
Wrecked.
What do you have as advice, or what have you seen that you admire from the programmatic stablecoins of Celo and Ongo launching soon? What do you feel they're doing right?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough question because I think there's not a single algorithmic stablecoin that hasn't been wrecked. So the chance of getting wrecked is pretty high. But we welcome anyone.
What do you think leads to them getting wrecked? Is it the gamification of it all? Like, is the incentive models? Because I know Ongo's trying to do a different incentive model.
Yeah. I think if you, it's always the same in smart contracts and Solidity or the way you're building it. If you actually build some shutdown mechanism or like protection mechanism, and then go slowly into deployment.
The big red button. The big red button.
Yeah, big red button. I think like we've got like some like projects on the space that they do algorithmic stablecoin, but also back a little bit of the treasury with some custodial stablecoin, and apparently this has been the solution so far for them to not get wrecked. But then I also want to go back to the point that I mentioned. Curve is focused on stablecoins, but stablecoins is not, as you mentioned, is not only like US dollars or whatever. If you go to Curve, you have like ETH pool or you have BTC pool. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's because they have like kind of like liquid staking, or they provide those assets are built in a different way and they still provide a yield. And then when you put them all together, you might have ETH from Lido, or you have at least ETH from another staking mechanism, and then that's how you build stable. But yeah, stable doesn't mean it's either just cryptocurrencies.
It doesn't have to be representative only of fiat currencies.
Yeah, it's just like
technically, a cross-chain like TBTC, for instance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just like a different way of looking at the same asset, but from different points of views, and then you build a pool, and that's how you end up with projects like, obviously I'm biased, but from StakeDAO or like Yearn or Convex, then building on top of it and providing all these different mechanisms on top of it. But yeah.
What's your favorite stablecoin that's been wrecked?
It's being wrecked?
Yeah, what's your favorite wrecked stablecoin?
I mean, a lot of them, like Titan.
Well, sometimes you love to watch it all burn, so.
Yeah, it's like, like this meme of the little meme on fire, like just like
the man, this is fine. This is fine.
This is fine, yeah. But yeah, obviously it's a good business for Vect. I wouldn't lie. Yeah.
It's good business. We're making it work. Okay, so what do you guys?
It's funny because when people say, "Oh, I've got a new stablecoin," I think you did that when we first talked, and it's like, yeah, the only thing I want is not to get featured on Rect. It's like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
He's secretly over here like it's happening.
It won't because
no, it's really well built. Yeah, no, I think like the new version of stablecoin, the algorithmic stablecoin, this is the way that we have to go. But like any innovation, at some point at the beginning, it's risky.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to understand that this is risky. It's new, and different. The way you're building it, it will get more and more sophisticated. But yeah, I think like the best one. The biggest one was Maker. I mean, it's been there forever.
But it's still, I mean, Maker, no offense, Maker is still essentially following the same model that monetary institutions have had. It's just a cabal of people deciding that this is going to
Yeah, but think about it, like it was like a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now they're trying to change it, but it's slow and it's hard. But I think like Celo, Angle, or other projects, like you guys now have a chance to not do the same mistakes that others done before, and then just build some new cryptonomics. And I mean, for Curve, it's huge because the more stable coins, then the more business, the more volumes, and the more fees, and it never stops. We are going after FX market, which is $6 trillion US dollars a day.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the goal. If we're doing today 1 billion volume a day, well, in a couple of months, we hope to do like 10 billion US dollars a day, and then never stop. Yeah, so please bring those tables.
They say more money, more problems, and yet you seem pretty excited about more money.
It's not about more money; it's about more fun.
Yeah.
I'm here for the tech.
Okay. Okay. That's what they say.
That's what Rex say.
What about you two? Like, you've seen some failed or not failed, some assets that weren't able to maintain their pegs, obviously, on launch. Oh, you're so excited to answer this question. Look at you.
Yeah.
Like, sweating.
No, I just wanted to reflect on what Julien said about stablecoins, algorithmic stablecoins being backed by custodial stablecoins. So DAI, it's super stable, mainly because now it's backed by 60% by USDC. Sorry?
But USDC is essentially fiat-backed.
Essentially, it's fiat-backed. So DAI is 60% fiat-backed, indirectly. And so.
But I've never seen, I don't know, maybe it's not, maybe I'm just not finding it, but I haven't seen like simulation, open source, like access to the simulations they've run on what happens if the bank that's like the bank itself loses liquidity, like Lehman Brothers in 2008. What happens to USDC if we're building a bunch of blocks on top of something that is essentially fiat-backed stablecoin currency?
Exotic package.
The exotic package.
That's what you sell. It's all shit. There's one thing that's good.
Yeah.
You sell it for good grade.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So
sorry.
no, yeah. What I wanted to say about DAI is it's 60% backed by fiat because they couldn't manage to hold the peg if they didn't have a convertibility between stable coins and collateral. With DAI, you have the vote structure. You have to lock ETH or another collateral, and then issue DAI. It's DAI you borrow, and then you have to repay for this debt. But what makes DAI stable is not obvious at all when you think about it. You don't have direct arbitrage opportunities whenever price deviates from peg, whenever, like it is the case for centralized stablecoins with Tether, whenever price deviates from peg, I can buy Tether USDT on the market, go to see the company and then make a profit on it, and thus bringing price back to peg. But with DAI, it wasn't the case until they added USDC as a collateral with a 0% stability fee. And so it was a governance, it was a peg which required governance in the past maker. And this is kind of a problem when you have a stablecoin which needs to be backed by an active governance to maintain peg. I mean, thanks to them, they paved the way for decentralized stablecoins like we're trying to do, and we wouldn't be here if there wasn't DAI before that to show that it was possible. But I think now it's time for more complex models, and like Julien said, it's an active research area, and lots of improvements can still be done, and that's why we're so happy to be in this space. And
I think it's huge, and I think I mean, taking that to you, we talk about stablecoins are essentially like this kind of like niche area that people accept about cryptocurrency, but I think it's a very big underestimation, like a very undervalued tool within the ecosystem for adoption. So if we go into payments, right, like what is, Celo itself is already involved in the payments game and like cross-border remittances, and do you think, what does that look like for you in the next 5 years? What do you think about like the remittance game? Obviously, we see NFTs launch a couple years ago, and now they're like catching on like crazy, and they're really evolving. But I think that stablecoins are probably more impactful to some extent for the daily lives of every user.
Yeah, great question. I mean, if you think about it, if you think of what is the most exciting thing in DeFi that we can build, to me, it's decentralized payments, right? I think the original Bitcoin white paper really spoke of this future of using crypto for payments, and it's been a long journey. And I don't know about you guys, but day to day, I am not transacting, buying my coffee in crypto yet. But that future is definitely coming. That future needs stable coins, and it's a really exciting future.
You can buy with Dodge, no?
Let's do a poll. Like, raise your hand if you've bought something in the last month with a stable coin. 2, 3, 4, 5. Julian, you don't count. You bought more stable coins. Okay, so that's about 6 people in a room of about, I don't know, is this about 50? So raise your hand if you bought something with ETH in the last month. Okay, still about 6, 7 people. So yeah, what does this future look like for you, Julian? When does this room have all their hands raised?
When we start ordering a Uber with stables and Airbnb and I think when like big apps like Revolut, start opening crypto world, I think people will just like, without noticing, they will just basically buy a lot of services but with stables.
Okay.
I don't think the scalability issue of blockchains is going to be the bottleneck here. What is going to prevent us from all paying in crypto is really going to be the regulatory aspect. And
yeah, so you want to get into that. So from
I'm not an expert into that.
That's third. That's not true.
Well, so some background on the regulatory aspect that I've from what I understand of what like different countries in the Eurozone are asking is that they want metadata attached to stablecoins. And is that something that you think metadata attached to stablecoins for the express purpose of like knowing what these payments are doing and where they're going and attaching it to it? Do you want to speak to that and what you're thinking about for Engel?
So just my global vision of decentralized finance, because the problem of the regulatory aspect of stablecoins is the same as DeFi in general. I think in like a few years, DeFi is going to be split into, there will be the DeFi of today, completely permissionless, where you like anyone can participate. And there will be a second version of DeFi that is compliant, and that is compliant. And what does compliant involve? It involves having, for instance, an Oracle solution allowing you to do KYC on each address. And if I were to create a company in blockchain tomorrow, that's what I would do. To enable people to, like you are a protocol, you'd query like Chainlink, like you query Chainlink, you query the Oracle for KYC, it tells you whether the address has been KYC'd or not.
It's already happening. If you look at Aave, they're now opening for institutions, and they're signing KYC, AML for people doing liquidations, and yeah, this is like private network for lending protocol.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if some other protocols start doing on the auto market maker level, trading for institutions. Yeah.
Only trading with like KYC established.
Trading, basically how it works is institutions, they can provide liquidity to a pool, and then you provide either the lending market or the trading market, but they can, the volumes and the assets only move between people that KYC the ML. And we're talking about like a lot of money, like a huge amount of money. But yeah, obviously this is not, this is against the vision of DeFi, but big institutions, they need to have access to that type of system and mechanism.
Go ahead, Merrick.
Yes, I agree that starting a company right now, I think compliance could be very interesting. And the reason I think that is because Aave can pull this off, right? They are big enough, they can do their own KYC, and they can also secure that KYC in a way that is both compliant and likely not to show up on Rect. But, you know, for your average...
Imagine like liquidating an institutions. Best thing you can happen to you.
On Rect.
No, I mean, no, because you can actually run liquidators. And imagine you liquidate BlackRock. Or like big guys like that.
Imagine if you liquidate the wealthiest fund in the world.
You can go for a nice coffee.
But so I think Aave can pull it off, but I don't think that every DeFi protocol out there is going to do a great job of this, and that worries me, right? And so I think having good solutions for this, I think, is important, but also doing it in a way that is true to the decentralized ethos. I think is the other thing that is going to be really interesting, right? Using ZK snarks to construct proofs about your identity and the fact that you've done compliance, being able to enforce the travel rule, being able to force these SARS, suspicious activity reports that a lot of these governments require. All of that, I think, doing it in a privacy-preserving way, I think, is very, very exciting, and I think we'll get there overall as a community, but I think it's going to take a lot of work.
So to simplify what you're saying, if I think I understand you, because my next question was going to be around, like, is there really a future that can exist with like metadata, like tagged stablecoins in this ethos of decentralization that we've all like latched onto in the last few years? But you're saying like through ZK snarks and like almost like in some cases maybe off-chain like entropy, you could attach that this address itself is in fact a KYC'd, accurate, like compliant address, but you still don't know who it's attached to. And that's wild.
It's kind of like an avatar.
Yeah.
And this avatar is giving access to few different systems. For example, you go to the gym, you want to apply to the gym, then usually they ask you for the address, and they ask you if you can pay the gym membership for 6 months, you have a credit rating. But normally there should be like an AI, not AI, but machine learning on avatar that would just ping like a vault, and then this vault would just answer yes, can get to the gym or not, but without sharing any information about the privacy. But I do believe that in this space, if we fail at bringing privacy, like Monero style, ZK, Sharks, all these things, then we just fail completely as a DeFi space. Because the problem is, like, if you look at what's happening in the space right now, like China going big at miners in Bitcoin, like they have their own agenda. Like if the market is reacting, you guys seen the video from Rect, Opium Diaries, Dystopian Dreams? If you, it will be like also maybe tomorrow at the conference, but basically we talk about like what US, Europe, and China are all behind the scene, all competing for this stablecoin race, because when you control money, you basically control the world.
Mhm.
And what's happening right now, they're trying to shut down like miners, like Bitcoin, crypto, because I think their own agenda is to push for their own stablecoin.
Yeah.
But then if you control money, who can spend the money, who can receive the money, who can buy some stuff, and then link to an identification system, I think we all screwed. Yeah. So the only way to like make sure we don't fail is to just push for privacy. Like all the transactions have to be completely private. You cannot read them, and that will be the only way for us to survive. Otherwise, they will take control and they will shut down everything.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give you a chance to respond, but I think that might mildly sound conspiracy formulated, but it's actually quite true. It's how like money itself actually works, and established like world reserve currencies are actually established. So I guess where do you like this brings us to like kind of the topic in question of this lounge is like this is the League of Bridges, this is the world of cross-chain, and we're talking about establishing standards with cross-chain before like institutions and governments get involved and establish those standards for us, right? But does that same argument sounds like you're saying applies to stablecoins? Like when they themselves are the ones who are going to make the most adopted and the most utilized stablecoins because they just naturally have that audience, where do we come in, and are we moving fast enough to fight back at that? I'll let you start.
No, I just wanted to say that I agreed with Julien, and I think it's a great point. So yeah, so can you repeat your question?
Yeah. So are we moving fast enough to fight back against what Julian's saying?
I think the governments are moving too slow, and the pace of innovation in DeFi and blockchain in general is like exponential, and it's really hard for them to catch up, and it's kind of a pain because when you speak to regulators, it's super hard for them to understand what you're doing, and they don't go as fast as like innovation goes. So we're moving pretty fast. I think this year has been incredible for DeFi, for the space, and we should now think about how to slow down and put ourselves in compliance while pushing for privacy and security.
Put ourselves in compliance, but also, from what I understand, you're saying create
new models. Yes, create new models. But it's hard when to develop. It takes time to develop and to test and stress test each stablecoin, and the time it takes to test a new stablecoin model, it often depends on market conditions. Like if everything in bull market, normally if your protocol is well designed, nothing wrong should happen to you. But in bear market, that's the moment in which all stablecoin models are stress tested.
Does that keep you up at night? Oh, go ahead.
It's interesting because algorithmic stablecoin, they all add their own like difficulties. But if you think about it, if we don't go to algorithmic stablecoin, then we'll not be able to build stablecoin, because the problem is they're all backed by custodial solution right now, and regulation could say, yeah, I mean, fuck it, you guys not be able to redeem the dollars that are into the custody, into those banks. We stop everything, and this happens like Tether, like USDC, all the stuff. They will be just crashing, because if you cannot redeem the money that is in the bank, or you have control of the money, then it's not a stablecoin. It's just like vaporware, something on top of something that is not accessible.
Yeah, it's good intentions backed by nothing. No, I completely agree. I think to the point that the governments are moving too slow, one of the things I've noticed from governments is that they never want to do anything, even though oftentimes they do. They never want to do anything that's going to hurt them in the long run. And right now, I'm half like convinced they just don't know how big of a deal crypto is going to be yet, or how much money they could potentially make. It's quite a bit like legalizing anything. And so when you say that they're moving too slow, I resonate with that. What do you think stablecoin providers, even crypto projects in general, can do to help create that compliance? Is it by just innovating new protocols that say, we didn't want to wait around for you guys to figure out your own, nonsense. We just decided to do it ourselves, and do you agree with it? What is your approach? What keeps you up at night about regulation?
So I don't think there is each stablecoin protocol will have its own peculiar approach. It's more the question of compliance we talked about. What keeps me up about regulation is will they be able to understand the products I'm building? And so it's more the second point of your question. Let's build something, and then ask them to understand, because now what's urgent for stablecoins and for algorithmic stablecoins, including, so in algorithmic, I'm including over-collateralized, Angle is an over-collateralized protocol, and under-collateralized protocols. What's urgent is to build the best and viable model for stablecoins, and then we could take the time to think with regulators, but and to explain them what we're doing.
So do you think, feel free to take any of these from all of you, there's this idea that Bitcoin itself as just a currency has had a lot of legitimacy by institutions investing in Bitcoin, and you know, like Tesla and others like coming in and saying, oh yeah, no, Bitcoin, we're gonna put it on the balance sheet. So you've also seen countries and you've seen governments suddenly kind of forced to reconcile the fact that they are nothing without their business infrastructure of their actual national communities. So does it actually also help not just to build the right protocols, but does it become a BD problem in a sense where you're like, okay, well, if we get Venmo, we get PayPal, we get all these different providers to accept our stablecoins, who's the US government? Who's, like, what's the European Union gonna do? Like, is there an aspect of it that you look at from that perspective?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think it's going to be a while before governments are putting crypto on their balance sheets. I think corporates are doing it first, right? I think you mentioned Tesla. I think it's a great example. Even though they sold some and no longer accept Bitcoin, I think what happened when they bought that Bitcoin is they explained a business model that I think everyone here probably understands, right? Which is that you buy a crypto asset, you then improve that crypto asset, you improve its utility, and then you profit through that, right? I think Tesla was one of the first companies that did it in a very public way. They bought Bitcoin, they improved the utility of Bitcoin by accepting it on their website. You could buy cars for a while with it, and then ultimately, in theory, they should profit from that. And I think when they did that, I think they gave, in effect, permission to every big public company to start thinking about it in the same way, right? I think if you're an executive in a big public company and you're excited about this new world, you're excited by DeFi, you're excited by crypto, good luck explaining to your CFO how you want to get involved and do this in this way, right? But as soon as Tesla did it, suddenly there was an example. You know, Elon's doing it, we can too, and I think that really helped, you know, and I think increasingly we're seeing a lot more companies interested in this way. I think longer term, once companies have done it, once a ton of companies have crypto on their balance sheets, then I think that legitimizes it to the point where countries can start doing it as well.
But specifically, like stablecoins being allowed for transactions on like already existing payment rails, or stablecoins being added to like the balance sheet of these projects. I mean, not to say that they've given the wrong young people money, but they, you know, the system has essentially, we have people in our space, in the crypto space, that are becoming investors themselves, and they're going to become investors in all sorts of companies, and then they're going to be advocates for the balance sheet holding, you know, whatever stablecoins they find valuable. Does that, Julian, I take it, like, does that itself rocket us past, like, this idea of regulators having to understand stablecoins, or are they just too late in the end?
I mean, I've got a different approach to this, and this is not, it's just my personal opinion and not the company.
This is not his company's opinion.
I think the only way to...
It's going to be controversial.
I mean, I truly believe that, I mean, the reason why we still have Bitcoin is because actually people that were building Bitcoin or using Bitcoin, they actually want against regulations. And regulation always had to either catch up or try to understand, but they many times try to shut it down. So in any industrial revolution, for example, the sharing economy, like Uber replacing the taxi drivers, Airbnb replacing one of the biggest mafia, which is the hotelry, like hotels. So in any of those revolutions, like if you just stick yourself and try to talk regulation, the only winners at the end of the day are the lawyers, because you will be injecting a lot of cash, trying to teach them something.
The only winners are the lawyers?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever you do, at the end of the day, if you go into a fight, you go into regulation and try to make it really nice. I mean, in the past, I've built different companies, and every time I tried to spend a lot of time with the regulation, it was always just injecting of cash and not making it at the end of the day. So, yeah, we have to be ready by whatever we're trying to build, and if there is a big impact in society and it's useful for people, I think people shouldn't be scared of just keep building. But at some point, regulation will come. But then, if everyone does it, then they won't have time to go after each of us, and then we can just scale and then build bigger tech.
This is like what I call the crosswalk theory. Like even if the light's not green, if we all walk, they can't kill us all.
Yeah. No, but I mean, look. Have you seen like the paper from like China a few days ago? Like Ian, they said Bitcoin is a scam. Blockchain is not a good technology. Like basically everything, like crypto. People using it for crimes, like everything possible. Stablecoin is a risk for stability worldwide, everything possible. But we're building a token. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks. And now will be the technology, probably Ethereum behind the scene. Okay.
Yeah. So I think I have one more question, and then I wanted to open it up to all of you. I'm sure you guys have thoughts, ideas, pontifications. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get you a microphone. Hey, all right, so there we got one right here. I like your Doge shirt, my man. And so I think it's going to go to actually you, Marek. So from what I've seen with CUSD and Celo, like we talk on this panel, we're talking from a perspective of, established Western countries really with like Western asset interests. I mean, obviously China was brought up, but I think there are governments out there, populations out there who are pretty fed up with their governments, and they're wanting to find like a digital solution to like a stable coin to create value. And from what I understand with CUSD is Brazil has been a very like large transactional population for like the Valora app and transacting in a mobile fashion with CUSD. So for you, is that because it's just easy to do, or is it because like the Brazilian people as themselves are already like mindset, their philosophy and their mindset is kind of like, let's move away from the government control?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, I think the Celo dollar adoption in Brazil came to us a little bit by surprise. So Brazil actually doesn't have much inflation, and their government has actually invested a ton into enabling electronic payments. So they have the PIX system there. You can do peer-to-peer payments pretty easily. And so Brazil initially didn't really look like a great market for crypto payments. But I think what happened that I think did make Celo dollars circulate well there was that crypto payments are very cheap and they work cross borders. And that meant that dApps could do things much cheaper using Celo dollars than they could using PIX or other things. So one of these protocols was Impact Market. Impact Market is anti poverty protocol. They disperse.
We got a fist pump over there. Woo! Wow.
They disperse on the order of 50 cents a day to over 20,000 beneficiaries right now. I think a lot of them in Brazil, but they also have folks all over the world. And they can operate at 10 times, they estimate, cheaper than the equivalents that are using non-crypto rails. And because they're international, it makes sense also for them to use crypto rails because they can they can send these transactions across borders really efficiently. And that just took off like wildfire in Brazil. I think people, obviously it's been a very hard year and a half with COVID, and I think there were a lot of communities that really benefited from this. And Impact Market signed them up. They installed the Impact Market app on their phones. They installed Valora, which is a really nice P2P social wallet that you can transact really easily on. And then these funds started circulating in these communities. And so even though Brazil has, again, relatively low inflation, so there shouldn't be that much interest in Celo dollars from a hedging perspective. And even though they have PIX, because this capital was injected through Impact Market, it started circulating. Because it's programmatic, you can start earning interest and rewards and all these things, all this exciting DeFi is happening. They can participate in it, and that meant people wanted to keep it instead of cashing out straight away. And moreover, merchants started wanting to accept it as well because they wanted to also have access to it, to also be able to do all the fun DeFi stuff. And so it just started spreading. And again, caught us by surprise, but it's really exciting to see. I think the communities there now, I think, painted a mural. They wanted to do like a fair where every transaction was based on crypto over a weekend. I think we're finally seeing kind of those ecosystems of people using crypto for payments, and it's just really exciting.
It's a classic Brazilian interpretation. Like, how can we throw a festival out of this new technology? I think we do have some questions. Homie here in the Doge shirt. You want to?
Hi, my name is Andre.
You're going to stand up. You're going to take this microphone.
Interesting question about stablecoins. So many of you have stated that if a stablecoin reserves diverge from like fully backed, the market should react appropriately and the price should crash, right? So let's take the most popular stablecoin on the market, Tether, 62 billion market cap. They have never ever published any proof of reserves, and there was yes, Tether. And there was a lot of evidence that they actually don't have anywhere close to 100%. Even on their official website, they say that a lot of those money are actually backed by shares, various credit liabilities, and so on. Why the prices? Why the market price is 1-to-1? Why is it $1?
I'm fascinated by this. I'm going to kick this off for a second here because I think it's interesting the El Salvador like news around Bitcoin, accepting Bitcoin. If you actually look into what they're doing, they're still like doing a swap to Tether from Bitcoin to like actually maintain the payments for El Salvador, and this is a community that's incredibly maxi focused a lot of the times, and yet they're still accepting that Tether, which has no like transparency into what they're doing, is going to be their like rail to create actual usability for people. So I think that's a really good question. Why does something that, if I am interpreting correctly, why does something that has no transparency into how it remains stable still so popular amongst a community of people who demand to have transparency?
So yeah, just about the question of the price. When you think about it, banks, they are also under-collateralized. Banks, they need to own 20% reserves in the central bank, but they can give you money in your bank account that they don't own in the reserves. And so the moment the money you have in reserves is only useful when someone comes to redeem it. So except in bank run situations where everyone comes to ask for the fiat money, then the amount that's in reserves doesn't really matter when you're at Ether. But yeah, the way the formula is done is not, we look at the total supply of USDT and we look at the amount in reserves and then we do a small proportion. It's really, can I redeem it for $1? Yes. But if everyone comes to redeem it at the same time, then the value of the USDT is going to decrease if they don't have enough reserves.
And maybe just to add to that, I think one reason why it's really kept its peg well, and you touched upon this earlier as well, the way that fiat-backed stablecoins keep their peg is that people can exchange, usually a few trusted institutions that have access to Tether. They can exchange fiat for USDT, and then that effectively allows them to take an arbitrage opportunity whenever the price deviates on a centralized exchange. So if the price ever drops below 1, they can buy it for less than $1 and then redeem it for $1 directly through their relationship directly with Tether. And so they can actually profit whenever that price deviates. And Maker, before it was backed by USDC, didn't have this, and that's one reason why Black Thursday happened. But fiat-backed stablecoins have this built in, and so you don't actually need that much over-collateralization on a day-to-day basis, in order to actually allow arbitrageurs to take this opportunity. And if you can make this really efficient, then that really helps keep that peg really, really well. The difficulty is when
Yeah.
right, unless there is a systematic loss of faith in the system, and then you have a bank run. And so once those arbitrageurs don't want to take the risk, because they're buying millions of dollars of this per day and taking those cycles, once they lose faith, once Tether doesn't let them redeem, then the whole thing can come crashing down.
And then there are two other things. Since you mentioned Tether, the market went up by 2.5%. It was crashing at minus 8.5%, it's now minus 6%. So you see there's something. And the second point is I think Tether is the closest stable from the corrupted system. The way it works exactly works the same as the normal traditional finance. That's what people love it. They don't need transparency. Only you want transparency, but they don't want transparency. So for them, it's amazing. That's why it's just keep pumping. I mean, what you need transparency where you can make a lot of money, you know? A lot of money, a lot of APY, just keep using it. That's what they do. Institutions, you know, they don't really need transparency on the bank sheet. It's just like, as long as you can make money, then you just keep using it.
So is it first mover advantage?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead.
First printer.
Yep.
Yeah, first printer advantage. Yeah, that's coming from him. Quote him.
Just on the regulations of stablecoins, and full disclosure, I am a lawyer in this space. There's so many different flavors of stablecoins that you guys have referenced, right? We're talking about Tether and its particular model. We're talking about different types of algorithms, stablecoins, Maker, and so forth. And then the regulatory context, I think, there's a bit of a danger in that we sweep all the stablecoins under one brush, and I kind of fear about that because you have Jerome Powell, the Fed Reserve Chair, saying, "I'm not sure about these stablecoins," but depending on the type of stablecoin, they may actually fall under existing regulatory regimes. They can be compliant. Other types, they're going to be more like securities because they require very complicated mechanisms. And then just on the point on the banks. So when you're a bank, you are regulated required to have capital reserves, but Tether isn't regulated as a bank. So it is more dangerous in that sense, right? And there's also lots of crazy things happening with what they count as cash equivalent, which is not how a normal bank might count as cash equivalent. But when I spoke to one of the original CTO of Maker, because he said the original vision he had for Maker was very different than what's turned out to be. He wanted to be governance minimized, that you have to have some trade-off between simplicity and complexity. The more complex, the more you're gonna have to actively manage. And also, you're not gonna be able to have an exact kind of peg, but it's gonna be within a range, within a band. So just kind of some thoughts as to how you guys think about the different types of stablecoins and the different types of risks and use cases, because some stablecoins, it's really not for payments, it's more for trading, it's for making yield with DeFi, and other types, it's really like, we're talking about actual payments and different user profiles and different risk profiles.
Yeah, so I think obviously centralized stablecoins should not be considered as decentralized stablecoins by regulators. I don't know how regulators should consider decentralized stablecoins like Maker and like what we're building at Angle, because we cannot guarantee all the time that we're going to have 100% reserves. We have built a protocol to do so, but we are not a bank, we're not a centralized entity, everything is done programmatically. And so in terms of regulation, it falls into a gray area. And I agree with you, I think it shouldn't be put in the same bag, and it comes of make me feel bad when I see regulators talking about stablecoins as a whole without understanding that there are lots of different models to peg a crypto token to an asset, which is what a stablecoin is. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I was going to say I agree.
I think that we come back to the point before, printing money is what makes the most powerful country in the world. As soon as you are able, like Angle or Celo or whatever, like able to print money, then central banks or governments, for them it's a big risk. I mean, it's like they're scared because they're not responsible anymore for printing the money. And the system works in such a way that you print money, you sell it to commercial banks or whatever, and then they get mortgage from the people, and then that's how the system is built. So this, I think there was a point from the SEC or Congress. They said that the biggest risk for the US is not war or like countries in somewhere doing war. It's actually crypto. It's actually stablecoin, because it just like we think like outside the box, completely the new system, how the system was built. And also you mentioned something. You said the bank is safe because it's regulated. I mean, 2009 was pretty painful. You know.
If you're talking about like a mom and pop community bank, those actually did fine.
Lehman Brothers did fine.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm playing.
Investment banking.
Yeah.
Different animal than
Yeah, my point is like I'm from the traditional like quant trading and seen a lot of things there. And what they build, as I said, exotic package, all the things that they sell, pension funds, debts, the entire system is built on non-transparency. And what we're bringing here is like a system that can be printed in less than 12 seconds, globally, distributed, accessible by anyone. If you think about it, as a government or as a lobby, you don't want this. You want to have control. So what we're building is, yeah, and trustically speaking, if we don't change the system or don't change how people think about how society works, then it won't actually be a good fit for them.
Yeah, I think that summarizes my thoughts as well around like these banks and how they are like essentially allowed to run rampant just for the sake of they're too big to fail. And one of the things that gives me a lot of hope in crypto is that there's a lot of essentially natural canary systems, like these people who are like itching to make a name for themselves as protocol engineers, as like, you know, researchers. And every time a new protocol is launched, especially an algorithmic stablecoin, I think I just see thread after thread after thread on Twitter that's like, look at the way this is built, look at the way this is built, look at this way it's built. But I guess we have to hope that that kind of natural canary system and like all the innovative people that are being gravitating towards crypto keep gravitating towards crypto and keep their gumption, like keep their stamina for calling out bullshit when they see it. But yeah, I just incredibly bright future for the idea of stablecoins and taking over a payment system like banks have completely dominated forever. But yeah, I think that we're about at time, and so I just want to thank you all for coming out and listening to stablecoins. Yeah, these folks will be around. Feel free to ask your questions. Not everybody, feels comfortable grabbing a microphone, but we're all here to learn. And yeah, thank you for being a part of this. And come back throughout the week. We're going to be doing stuff like this. We're going to have whiteboards and workshops for those of you that are engineers or for those of you that want to be engineers. And we're just going to have a good week. There's a guy over here in a bucket hat. He's going to DJ at some point. That's pretty big. Yeah, right behind you, Mr. Bucket Hat. Yeah, so thank you for coming, and we'll talk soon.
Nice.